So today I'm working on my Vintage Air install for the Chevy C10, and I put one in my '89 Blazer that I had before, and I know the video was pretty long and pretty in-depth, so I'm making this one a whole lot shorter, but this one is a little bit different. The main control unit is the same, but all the other brackets and hardware is a little bit different. So one of the things I wanted to show you was the option you have. You can keep, and this is for a non-factory AC truck. This has just got the heater. This is the original controls that came with it. So I could have got one that looks like this that has the electronic controls, or I could have got the newer style looking one. I wanted to keep this one because I kind of like the way it looks. It's kind of got the beat up weathered look. So the control that it has with it is you take off those little slide down clips on the rest of the controls. You take out that the plug that the wire connector connects to. You take that out and toss that. You're going to keep your screws. You get these 3 sliders, and then this wiring harness plugs into here. So when you move these, I guess it's got a sensor or something like that that can tell where the position is. So when you put them in there, you want to adjust this part that's locked down here all the way as far down here as you can get. It comes with all the new clips to attach the new ones on there, and these are all color coded, and it tells you which ones are in the directions. I don't know why it said the first 2 needed to be in this orientation, and the bottom one needed to be upside down. It needed to be different from that. I don't know why. Well, I guess now I kind of see it, because these 2 are a lot closer than those 2. That's probably why it had to be upside down. But it's got the wiring instruction, because these 4 each have a different colored white and blue, red, green, or yellow wire in there. So they have specific spots that they need to go in. This part here, there's holes in there, and it's a lot longer. There's like 8 holes, and it tells you to clip off right at hole number 3, because I guess that's all you need. I think I probably would have left it off or left it on, but this is articulating all the way over, so I'm not really too worried about that. I'm sure it's a universal fit, but for this one they have you do that. So I'm not quite sure what this one goes to, but I'll find out soon enough. The rest of this is the wiring harness that's going to go under the dash. And then there's only one plug for this, so you really can't get this wrong. There's another one that's got, this is 6 pin. The other one's got 10, I think. So this is all ready to go. This is all back together. I'm going to put this back in the truck. One thing that happens sometimes with these factory ones is this piece. This is like that pot metal. I guess people call it pot metal. This is steel, and it just had like a little, not even a rivet, but almost like a little solder point. And I can show you here a little bit closer. And so this broke loose from this, and I tried putting some solder on there, but it doesn't like sticking to the pot metal. So I'll show you what I did. I'll get a little bit closer here. Hopefully we can see this. Right in here, I just drilled those out just a tiny bit and put in these tiny little screws in there. I could get 2 in there, and I could get this one in here. It's kind of an odd angle. I couldn't quite get that one, but it's holding together pretty secure with those little Phillips head screws in there. So I'm gonna go with it. I mean, if this ever fails or I just get tired of trying to work on it, they have the other one. I think it was like 225 or 250 bucks for the upgraded one that looks like this, but has the brand new style electric controls. So I'm gonna get ready to install that. I'm gonna show you what I did with the dash too. So this being a non-AC truck, I did not have the hole for this, and I did not have the holes for these vents on both sides. I guess they're a little bit smaller than the factory, because I guess the factory one's got to come up on this beveled edge here, but this is like a 1.5 inch hole. It gives you a template that sits in here, and then I just drilled out a bunch of holes and took my Dremel with a carbide bit and just kind of ground it out, and then it wasn't quite big enough, so I kind of had to just make a little bit bigger and just a little bit until I finally got that to go on there. On the back, there's a sleeve that screws on. On the inside of this fender, like back in behind this, there's another piece of the frame of the dashboard that sticks out, and you're gonna have to grind that down a little bit too. So it's good to have that Dremel with the carbide tip so you can ground that down a little bit, because otherwise this thing doesn't like to fit in there very well. I did the same one on the driver's side, and then they also give you a template for this. So I just found the middle of here, and it says top of radio opening. I took all this stuff out just to make it easier to work around. It's really not too hard to pull out the radio. And I did have to take the speaker out, and I'll show you here in a second. So what I did was that template, it says top of the radio, but what it is this is kind of round here. So I just taped it right on that edge and just kind of molded it or kept it right against the body. And then what I did was I found that edge and I just made that line. I cut it out, the template, and I just drilled out the holes and went in with the Dremel. And in the beginning it wasn't quite big enough, but I just took a little bit of metal off each time because I didn't want to screw up this dash. So it looks like it's a tiny bit off center. I think it's a little bit more to the right than it is to the left. So I might try and make some adjustments, but this is curved here, as you can see. So it's going to sit against the body of the dash. And then while I'm down here, you have to get these adapters with those S clips for that one, and then the round one is up in there a little bit, you can see. So the speaker mounts up here to this thing. I had to take that out because it was the original factory speaker, which is no good anyways, but it had like a big, like, I don't know what it's called, like a capacitor or magnet on the back of it. So when I was in here trying to cut this out, it was hitting on that thing. And one thing I will say is this can only go up and down. It doesn't have like a left and right function. That would be kind of nicer. So when you're driving, you can direct this more towards yourself. But I mean, it's a small cab, so I'm not too worried about it. So we got that in. I'm not too worried about the speaker because I'm not going to worry about that having that, because I just use a Bluetooth speaker with my phone. So I had to take out the speaker and toss that. These two are going to be ready to go. The dash vents do just pop right up out of there, but be careful, those things are brittle. And other than that, I'm about ready to put this in, but I've got to go to work. So what I'm going to do is I've just left this all connected here, and I've got a jump wire to go to the brown wire that comes off of your plug. That's your key hot. That came off of the plug as well. So I've got that up there, so when I drive to work, I've at least got a heater and a fan going so I don't freeze to death on the way to work. So that's all in there. Plus, obviously, I don't want to disconnect the heater core and have to mess around with the heater hoses. So I'll get that going. I'm going to mount this in, and it's just these two Phillips screws on the bottom. That's all it is to connect that to the dash here. So I'm going to put that back in and get that out of the way. I've got all the brackets attached to my condenser, the first hard line, the dryer, the binary switch. This is all bolted in. This is where the hood latch connects. I did loosen up the grill just to kind of pull this out a little bit. There's like 3 bolts on each side, and then there's that center bracket that attaches to the hood release, as well as down here, and I think there's a screw hole down here somewhere. So I pulled this out a little bit so I could get better room. You're going to assemble all this stuff beforehand. The one thing that I don't really care for is there's a hole here that you're going to have to kind of drill out. Mine was already there, but it wasn't quite big enough. It needs to be like a 3/8 hole. They were already here. For this being a non-AC truck, this radiator support seems like it is an AC truck, because that shows you're supposed to drill a 1 1/4 inch hole here that's already there. So your hard lines are going to come through, are going to go through here. It gives you a grommet. So yeah, I'm not quite sure, but I had to Dremel out those holes just to make them a little bit bigger, because it's got the rubber like sleeve nuts that go in there. And the bolts, though, I will say this, the bolts that they give you, the nut thing, I guess, that slides in the hole. So you got to drill that out just a tiny bit, but be careful because your radiator's right there. And I just put this new radiator in. So this thing goes in, and then when you put that screw in, you're literally touching the radiator. Like, I don't really want to put a hole in my radiator, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the hardware store, and I'm going to find, I tried grinding it down, but I'm just messing up these screws and they don't like it. So I'm going to get some screws, and this happened with the other Blazer too. The vents that screwed down on the dash were screws like this that had a Phillips head on it. And I'm thinking to myself, it was harder to get underneath the windshield with a Phillips head screwdriver. I had to get one of those right angle ones, which is very difficult to get in there. So I'm gonna get a couple bolts that are shorter, so I don't have to worry about going through, because they're sticking out on the back side of this. They're sticking out a good, almost, I'd say, 1/4 to a 3/8 of an inch. So I'm just gonna buy some shorter ones, but I'm gonna buy some that have like a regular hex head on them, because the only screwdriver I can get in here, unless I take the grill all the way out, which I don't want to, it's hard to get. You're gonna have to put a little stubby screwdriver in there to get those screws, and I figure we might as well just go get some different ones. I think that's something, you know, Vintage Air probably should have thought about a little bit better, but whatever. So I painted some of these lines black just because I hate to have that silver poking out through when you look through the front of the dash and you see everything's black, except you see those hard lines for the Freon that are bare metal. I don't know, I think it looks kind of bad. So I painted these ones. I got a couple more that are drying. One other thing you gotta do, you have to drill a hole in here for the bracket. Again, this is a non-factory AC truck. If it was AC, this would already have a bracket here, because your hard lines are gonna go through this hole. They're gonna come out underneath. They're gonna, 2 clamps are gonna connect to that. So you gotta take your battery out. This is an inline 6. So my next problem is the bracket they give you is this huge monstrosity. What you have to do is it bolts into these 2 bolts down here. There's another bolt beside that, and then it bolts into here. So I'm guessing you toss that bracket, and this bolt hole up top it uses. I mean, it's nice because they give you all the hardware. It's nice because they give you all the hardware, and they tell you the new belts you're gonna need, because the compressor is gonna go here, and the alternator is gonna go up here. So you're gonna have one belt that's gonna be on the inside groove, and the water pump, and the alternator. I don't know if this is the same one that'll work or not, but then you'll have another one for the compressor. The compressor will sit forward a little bit more, and the compressor will use its pulley and the front pulley on my crankcase pulley there, which was kind of nice. I don't have to worry about modifying any of that crap. So the next point that I wanted to make is about the hoses that go to the compressor, because the compressor is going to sit down here. This is going to be up top. It has 2 lines that come out here and here. They have to be at the top. They have to be pointing up, if I read the directions correctly, so they can't, you know, flip the thing upside down and have them come out the bottom. So you're gonna have 2 of those big hoses coming off of here, and they're gonna have to go somewhere. I really don't want to go over the top of the motor. I think that's gonna look bad. Some other people have said they've gone underneath. I don't really think I want to go underneath. I don't know, that seems a little strange. I'm thinking maybe loop them around and go back along the firewall, like behind the valve cover there, and have the 2 loop around and come back here, come back up here. So then I'm gonna have the 2 lines that come out of this big hole right in here. 2 hard lines. Those are both gonna connect. They're gonna mount to this. And then they're gonna go, once this is out of here, the plate will have 4 holes right in a row, all totally vertical with each other. The bottom 2 are gonna be for the heater core, the top 2 are gonna be the screw-in lines for the Freon. So one has to go, one is going to go literally straight from there to the hard line here, like it's a straight shot, and it's got a 90-degree angle fitting on it that I'm probably just going to take off and have somebody put a straight end on, because it has another straight end to go on the other side. And I used a radiator shop, not a radiator shop, I think it was they did AC lines, but they're the ones who crimped on the lines for the Blazer. And you can't just crimp the ends on whatever and just twist it, because these things, it's like these hoses, they don't want to manipulate they only want to go in like one direction. So the other one's going to have like a 90-degree angle and go back around there to go to the compressor. The other one's going to have to come straight here. And I forget, the other one loops or interconnects with the one that goes to the compressor. There's 3 hoses, I forget which way they go. But I think I might just have to like have my own custom lines made. I don't know if I can salvage the ones I got. The one is going to be, I'll be able to cut that down and just put a straight end and just go from here to here. That one's going to be plenty long. The big number 10 hose is going to come out the top of the 4 openings, and that's going to go to the compressor. And it's got a 90-degree angle, so if I can feed it back around there, maybe, I'm not quite sure, but that's my next dilemma. So I don't think I need to drain the radiator hose and take it out, but I might, because I just put a new radiator in, a new heater core, new hoses, and water pump, because the old antifreeze was literally brown. If you watch that video, that antifreeze was horrible, and I tried flushing out the engine and it never came out clear, so might not be a bad idea just to drain the radiator anyways. And especially since I'm gonna have to deal with these heater hoses, and just put all new antifreeze in when I'm done with that. So, and I did take the fender well out. I only broke 2 bolts. I was actually very surprised for this being as rusty and old as this is. I only broke 2 of them, and these the little nut things that clip on there, I think I broke 2 of those, which was pretty amazing. And even the one that was connected down here was all rotted out. That one came out easy. I don't know how. I have no idea how. So you don't have to take this out, and I think it's pretty common on all the trucks. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4th one over here. There, 4 bolts. And some people will try and snake some extensions down there with like a universal connector to try and get those, but you can't. It's so, you're shooting blind. It's so hard to see these, and you can't get into them from the other side. And this thing is literally going to come out and either get thrown in the garbage or maybe sold. So I was just like, you know what, let's just take it out, because this is not going to be just an overnight project. This is going to be over the course of probably 2 weeks. So yeah, I just took that fender well out, and I'll just put it back in right when I'm done. I think this is just so much easier to work on with that out of the way. So I'm gonna get back to it. I'm gonna get some of those new bolts and get back to it. Today we're gonna be putting the bracket on that's gonna hold the alternator and the compressor. It's gonna mount here on the driver's side. So if you've got a V8, this is gonna be a whole lot different for you, because your compressor is gonna be on the other side, and your hoses are going to probably route in a different direction. So you've got a hole right up here that's open. You're going to take this top bolt out of the water pump. You can get that out without taking all this off. It says you got to take the pulley off and all that other stuff, and I'm going to try and do it without that. Hopefully save you guys some time. But this bracket is going to go right up in here. There's a hole there, the water pump hole, and then the 2 down on the bottom. You're going to have to take that alternator off and then take that bracket off and toss that. But the good thing is we've got new hardware for all of it. So this is the 3/4 inch bolts, the little stubby ones with a lock washer. Oops. Those 2 are going to go down there. Just going to to get them threaded lightly. So you're going to take the third one. That's going to go in this top spot. That's going to feed into the top of the engine block there, the top of the head. A little tight squeeze in here, but should be able to get it in there all right. I think these are 9/16 heads. Yeah, we're right up against our valve cover there, so that's proving to be a little tricky. Once we get below that, we should be all right. Just tight squeeze in here. So we're gonna get this mounted, and then I'm gonna put my alternator back on, wire it back up. My compressor hasn't come. I'm upgraded to the chrome one, and that did not come with the original order, so it's coming in the mail. So we're gonna get that done so we can at least get this in and put on the new belt. Won't be the belt for the compressor, so we'll be able to drive this thing just fine without messing around with it. And then on the front, we're going to take the small spacer. Well, this is all still loose. Dang it, I might have to take that off. We're going to try and get that bolt in there because this bracket sticks out, gosh, about a 1/4 inch or so. So I might have to. I really don't want to have to pull the whole radiator because it's hard to get in there to get to the radiator, to the bolts that are on the front of the fan. So I'm gonna hold on and give it a shot. So update, I had to take the radiator out. I didn't want to, but I replaced the radiator and I flushed the whole system, and the heater core, all the hoses, water pump, everything like that got changed out. So the antifreeze I drained out because I wanted to flush it since I drove it for a couple months. But it's still kind of coming out brown and gunky because I never could get the engine flushed all the way. So water pump bolt went back on here. It has a spacer. There's a spacer that looks like this one, and then there's the two bigger ones that are like a 1/2 inch wide. That little one feels like it goes in there better. I think that's the one. So 2 bolts down the bottom, this bolt here on the top. Let's see if we can't get this finished up. Yeah, it's too close to that. It's just too close to the fender to get in there, so I can't get my ratcheting wrench on there. Got a bracket mounted. I'm gonna flush out my radiator and put that back in. I'm gonna put my alternator up in here and get back with you. So I have an update for the install for the Vintage Air. I've gotten everything installed. I've got my condenser, the dryer, all my lines. If you remember earlier, I painted these just because I didn't want these silver lines sticking out. I don't know, I think it looks kind of like an eyesore. I have the bracket. I painted it. It's this big monstrosity that bolts on here. The alternator gets moved up. This bracket is almost too small. I don't think the alternator is too big, but like right in here, like it's rubbing across there. There's enough. It's loose enough you can move this to tighten the bolt to tense up the belt, so that's fine, but it's just kind of like, I'm not quite sure why they made it that way. I got the compressor mounted. I had to cut out part of the frame. I wasn't happy about it. I know it probably doesn't look great, but this is totally DIY. I just use a cutting wheel and I cut out a section. Always make sure you drill the corners so they don't tear, but if I have to later on, I can repair that or box that in if I feel like that's too weak, but I don't think I have to worry about that now. The compressor's in. It's wired up here. I just did a butt connector and then ran this wire up to the binary switch. I have to drive the truck for work, so I'm not going to connect it because I don't want the compressor running. I don't want the belt running because it uses the Freon for lubricant as well. So
that is there. It's ready to go. The lines aren't connected, but the lines are, I'm gonna have to do some modifications to those, because the connectors that come off of here and here are like the 135-degree ones. So it comes off and then the hose almost runs down. So it's, and they have the ports to fill them, the high side and the low side. So the larger number 10 hose literally sits across the cradle there, and I'm going around the back and then coming around, and it's going up to the blue connector on top, and it's got a 90-degree connector on there, which is, it's working out okay. It's not great, but it's working out. The other one that goes from that little blue connector, let's see if I can zoom in on it. Those two hard lines that are right here. This line here is going to go around the back, and it's going to connect. That's the number 8, and it connects to this one here. That one's about 1.5 feet too long, so I'm going to call Vintage Air, and I'm going to see if they can send me another hose. I'm not sure if I get one from a local air conditioning shop, if they will, you know, if that voids the warranty or something like that. I'm not sure, but I need to get this thing running, and I need to figure out what's going on. So I got my heater hoses on, the inline pump is there. I might try to do something with that wiring later. I want to put grommets in here because those hard lines are literally bouncing on the holes in that plate. So I'm going to try and put something in there to cushion that. This one, I bought a crimping tool, and I bought another straight end. So I crimped on the other one, and I cut that number 6 line short, because that one just goes straight from here to here, and I didn't want a 90 coming out all over the place, so I just figured straight through. I have the other wires going into here. You have a big white and a skinny white that it says you need to ground them to the negative on the battery. That's what I did with the 89 Blazer, and I never had any issues with it, so I'm gonna go from there. The other wire here is supposed to be a blue one, and I didn't want a blue wire sticking out there, so I just changed it out to a black one. The other wires, the red, this is a direct lead to the battery, so they're good there. All the rest of these wires are going to run through here. I got them coming out through this hole and then going in there. I was thinking about drilling a hole down here somewhere, but I really couldn't find a good spot. Maybe I'll do that someday in the future. This plate I just got on, there's no way to reach in behind here to have somebody hold that bar that has the threaded nut on it to drill that in. So what I did was I just took some tape, held it in place to what looked like center, and I taped it in place loosely. I put the cap on with the silicone, and I just lightly threaded that in so I could feel it catching the threads. And once it did, I just tightened her down, so that's settled there. The drain hose, it says you need to cut a 5/8 inch hose, and it needs to be like 1 inch down. This is kind of where it came out. I didn't really like how it comes out in the middle of this plate, but it's not a big deal for now. I'm just gonna leave that, because I had to drill that big old hole in there. Everything else is looking pretty good. I've got all the connections made under the hood, and I just hid the wires underneath the fender here because I didn't want to look at those. Now under the dash, the wires are all coming in there, and what I did was I routed them. You can see the hole right up in there they all go through. I took some of those wires, like the thick red and the thick white ones, that go and they plug in to the one plug that's just there's a white plug that has 3 connections and the one that has 2 connections. The 3 connector one is the one that comes from the water pump, that inline pump, and I just connected that and hit it up here. But you have a lot of wire. You have tons and tons of wire. And it's kind of frustrating because you have so much wire and then you're trying to hide it with the air duct back here and then put in your glove box insert. It's a tight fit. And I took out my one air duct because it was kind of getting in the way, so I wanted to work around that and get that fixed. This is the ground. I forget what that's for. I think that's for when you connect it, you have to do like you have to do a test. I think it has to learn, the computer has to learn the high and the low side for the fan speed. There's my junction box. That has the white and the red that come off of that. And that has that plug. And then the other end of the plug here Sorry, this is not the greatest angle here. But this is the plug. The other end of this plug goes to the fan motor. The other end of it, what I did was instead of using the other plug, I just cut that wire off. I cut off, this is the thick white and the thick red that go to the battery, negative and positive. I cut off probably 6 feet of both. And just put female spade connectors, and they're just stuck in there for now. Or, well, I think I'm probably gonna leave that. There's another skinny white. I took one of the extra nuts and grounded it to there. But that was the biggest thing, was there's just so much of that wire just hanging in here, and there was like not really any really good place to put it. So I just cut it off and ran that wire up to the front. The purple and the tan are going there. I think the violet is the key hot, and this is the key hot that came from the old heater. And I think the tan one is the dash light, but I already have the dash light in here. It's the old school one that just snaps in, because this is the original one, as you saw earlier. And that just fits in there and grounds. I need to get my key to make sure that one works okay. This is the other defroster duct. It's just hanging here for now. I might try and tuck that back up. So I'd want to put the radio back in, and maybe someday put one of those retro sound radios in there so it still looks factory. I think there's companies out there will take your old radio and redo them so they still work like the regular AM FM, and it's a Bluetooth also. But taking this all out, you kind of have to do in the ashtray to get around all that. So next I'm going to hook up those wires. I ran all my air ducts. It's kind of a tight squeeze, but you've got all 3 of your connections down here for the air ducts, and then these 2 right here for the defrosters. I'll put that one back in. I don't want to put the glove box in yet because I don't want to have to pull it right back out and deal with it later. One problem I'm finding with the air ducts is that hose gets kind of pushed on there, and then it's got like twisting tension on it, so it doesn't want to sit down in there. And I'm pretty sure these things just snapped in. I don't think there's anyways, but mine are so old and brittle. As you can see, I'm snapping corners off of these. So I'll try and put those back in. I'm gonna get the purple hooked up to that brown, and I think that tan is the one I don't really need to use. That was the biggest hurdle, was moving all the wires, because otherwise these wires were like hanging down here, and you can see them. It's bad enough you gotta look at this big old box here. It's not the end of, not the end of the world, but it's better than having to look at, than having to not have AC at all. So that's there. I'm gonna hook up that power, make sure I've got power to it, but I'm not gonna hook up power to the compressor because I don't want it running. But that's where I'm at for now. I'll try to schedule an appointment with my mechanic so he can test the lines and then fill it. Make sure when you go to your mechanic you tell them exactly how much Freon it needs. So I think this one's like 28 ounces, but I'm sure it varies for different models and different years. So I'm sure they have different sizes for them. I've got my drain line hooked up there. So everything should be good to go. I might go ahead and put my fender well back in soon. So that's it for now. Just gonna finish that up. I'm probably gonna go through all these hard lines again and just double check that I didn't forget any O-rings before I drive down and have the mechanic test all this. So I will be back with an update as soon as we get that running and we get the Freon in there and get it running. Here's my next update for you guys on the install. I went to the mechanic, I had him test the system and go to fill it with Freon. Everything was testing out fine, they said. It was not leaking, but then when we went to fill it with Freon, the mechanic was telling me it went straight into a vacuum, and he didn't quite know why. He thought it was possibly the expansion valve. So I called Vintage Air and talked to them. And of course, you know, you don't want to run this with the belt on until they get that thing filled with Freon, because the Freon is also the lubricant. So that, and also the wire that goes to the compressor, so you don't have a signal going there. I think these are kind of universal. Anyways, I called them up and they said, check out that number 10, that top one that's disconnected. That's the number 10 line that goes to the compressor, and it's also the large one on the inside. I'll show you. It's this big one that has the foam on it, and it also has this larger fitting, and you have to put that real sticky like rubber tape stuff. You put it over there to keep the condensation from dripping all over your carpet. So the guy told me, take that line off, disconnect it. Luckily it's the easiest one to get to, but he said pop that off and make sure that there's no rubber plug in there. So as soon as I undid it, this thing came flying out of there. So I must have missed that. So it's always good to double check all your connections, especially when you go to mount this box in here for the final time, because that was stuck in here and I must have missed it. So hopefully that's our problem. I'm really hoping. I'm about 99% sure that that's the culprit, because he said that sometimes people forget to pull that rubber plug out, and that has a similar symptom. Like I said, the compressor was going straight into a vacuum, and it wouldn't take the Freon. So that's where we're at right now. I'm gonna put this back up. Don't throw away any of your seals, any of your lube for the for those green seals. Don't throw any of that stuff away until this thing's all the way done and working properly. Luckily I have mine, because I'm going to put more on that green line there since I took that apart, and I saved that sticky stuff, so I'll cover that back up. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to put that all back together and get it with the mechanic, and hopefully get that fixed so we can get this thing some Freon, because it's already starting to hit the upper 90s here in Phoenix, and I sure would like to have this thing running. So I'm going to put that back together and I will let you know how that turns out. This is the last video for the Vintage Air install. I just got it back from the mechanic. They tested it, filled it with Freon, everything was good. The other day I took it in to have them do it, and they said it was not holding a vacuum. So I think I put it in the video before this, so I'll add that on too. So the top connector here, this is the number 10 line. That's the one that has the foam cover on it. So where that goes in and connects to the box, there's like a rubber stopper after you take that cap off. I forgot to take that out, so that was the reason why we're having that trouble. So I called Vintage Air, and they're like, that's mostly highly likely what the problem is, because they said that happens to a lot of people. So luckily that was the problem. They said they'd send me an expansion valve if that was the problem too, but I said, well, you know, let's hold off on that. So that's all done. It works really good. Once you're done with the Freon charge and it is running, there's a programming feature you have to do with the fan speed, and I'll show you how to do that here. It's pretty simple. There is a ground wire or programming wire that has like there's a male covered end, and I think it's a gray wire. It almost kind of looks like a tan gray, and it's inside, and it's up under here in the box. So what I have done, I don't think I can pull it down, but the other end of this white wire has a female connector that you can connect to that, and I just left it hanging down here. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to find a good ground. So I just use a jumper wire, and then what you're supposed to do is connect it to here. So I'm gonna leave that undone. These are the instructions for it, and I'll show you how to do that. I'll do it real quick. The coolest part is it says you can do this as many times as you want, because it's got the fan speed. So this is my own controls. This is cold, that's hot. So I gotta remember, it seems backwards to me. This is your fan speed, so obviously that's high, that's low. This is for your vents, and then over here is for your defroster. So we're gonna leave that there. Actually, we gotta put all the way to the right. So what we're gonna do, turn the key to on. You can already hear the fan running, and it's gonna be super loud. So then what you do is you're gonna connect this wire to here. Sorry, it's loud. Then you're gonna wait for that change. You hear the fan change. Now we're gonna move the knob, all the knobs over all the way to the left. Sorry about that, that's probably loud. Move them all the way to the left. Then we're gonna disconnect the wire. It's gonna come on, and it's gonna change speed again. And then all you have to do is just turn your fan back up. It's nice, it's blowing cold. It's blowing nice and strong. There's that one, and then the center one here. So I'm gonna turn that way down because that's way too loud, and I'm gonna turn that off. So you can do that over and over and over and over again. You can keep this jumper wire if you want to. I've got it way up in there. It does have a covered like male end on it, so they say you're supposed to wrap it in electrical tape, but mine's kind of buried back in there. And then as you can see, this is the plastic cover that comes in the kit, and there's really not a whole lot of room for anything. It's only probably about 2 inches thick at the thickest part there. You could unscrew all this and move that over and get to those wires, but I'm probably just gonna take that jumper wire and disconnect it by hand up there. So that's there. We're all done. I gotta throw the radio and the ashtray back in there. So yeah, it's good. It's blowing air. I kind of wish this one had a left and right. All it does is just go up and down. But I mean, this cab's small enough, it's probably not too big of a deal. And down here, you've got your 3 vents here that go to the left, right, and center. And then you've got these 2 that are up in here. Those are for your defrosters. Now, when I turn it on, I could feel a lot of air blowing back here, like out of the side of this box. I don't know why, but I don't really feel like taking this whole thing back apart again and trying to figure out where it's coming from, because that's gonna mean removing the Freon, disconnecting everything, and taking this all apart and taking this box back out. So I'm just gonna leave it. I'm not too worried about it. I mean, it's blowing cold air, and that cold air is kind of getting pushed up and out, so I'm okay with it. I mean, it's Phoenix, it's gonna be hot. I'm not really gonna be driving this thing for a super long distance. You know, I don't really mind the heat too much. So that's it for the Vintage Air install. I really like it. I think the instructions are really good. I think they're very easy to use. They have a great list of all the things, or all the parts, nuts, bolts, washers, everything you're gonna have in there, everything you're gonna need. There's a couple extra leftover parts. Make sure you use that little tube of the lube when you put those green washers on. There's plenty of it, so you don't have to worry about like there's not enough and you run out. There's plenty left over. Yeah, so that's it for now. I'm getting a little bit of a belt squeak. I got it happen like twice when I was driving home. I might try and readjust this and make sure that's tight. Yeah, oh yeah, that's he probably didn't tighten that up enough. So I'll tighten that up a little bit more. And then the mechanic advised me that probably wouldn't be a bad idea to put some like heat wrap, like you put on headers, to put around here, because I've got the exhaust pipe right here, and then of course just the heat of the engine, and then everything back there. So I might do that, might wrap that just for the heck of it, just to keep the Freon as cold as I can. Everything else is done. Truck's running great. Overall, yeah, really happy with it. This is my second install. A lot shorter than the first one. I know the first one was very long, but editing this one down a whole lot shorter. I'd love to do the vet sometime soon, but that's probably gonna have to wait. I got a lot more projects and things I need to do with this truck. Rear brakes, I'd like to do a disc brake upgrade. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. I'm gonna keep making more videos for all the stuff I'm gonna be doing to the truck and all throughout this whole restoration. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like.